Okay, so I have around 80, almost 90 hours in Path of Exile 2. As you can see in the background, I have a couple of characters. I played Witch to level 2, which I hated, so I immediately stopped. My first character was actually a monk. I leveled him to level 66 and got to maps, but also didn't really like it. I have a ranger, which I hated, and then I played a mage, a sorceress, and a stormweaver, and I actually really liked it. She's level 76, I'm in endgame, I'm doing maps, I've also done the full third trial already, but we'll get into all of that. So I've played a decent amount now. I haven't seen everything, but I wanted to make a review because I'm at the point now where I'll probably not play that much anymore until, well, obviously new stuff comes out. So, first and foremost, preface. I had a feedback video before already, and there was a couple of things that I was really annoyed by, and to be completely honest, a lot of that was already addressed, and I really, really like that. So first of all, the loot is way better now. Currently, I'm sitting with 13 eggs, not that great, but we're getting there again. The loot feels way better. I feel like the rares and all of the bosses and all of those things give way more rewarding loot. I think that change was great already. Also, the dodge roll feels way better now because you can actually go through most mobs and you don't get stuck nearly as often. But I think the dodge roll changes were also really good already. On top of that, before I go into everything, I believe Path of Exile 2 has the best foundation of any ARPG I've ever played, and it's not even remotely close. I do not think they're really using that super well yet, though. Anyways. So we'll get into it. First of all, I really like the boss fights. I think the boss fights are amazing. We talked about that. And I think if you like cool ARPG boss fights, PoE 2 is a great choice. But now with that out of the way, let's talk about everything that I do believe they still need to address to an extent. And also everything that is really, really a big issue. So first of all, on my first few characters, I really hated the game. I genuinely disliked it. To the point where I basically wanted to stop playing. This was supposed to be my last character. Like, I was like, okay, I'll just try the Sorceress now. If I hate it, I'll just not play the game anymore. Turns out I actually really like playing Sorceress, and I had like a really fun build here with Mana Flare on Spark with Elemental Storm. So basically cast on crit, but without the cast on crit. Mana stacking with Archmage, and it's honestly been really fun to get through the campaign with this build. A lot of the problems that I had before with the auto aim assist, which, you know, was a big problem on the monk. If I'm aiming somewhere, I want to aim there. Like, how is that so hard? It's fucking mind-blowing. What is that? Look where my mouse was. I think that overall also ties into a lot of melee abilities or combo abilities. The bell is a big problem. Any of the palm attacks, like I get randomly teleported to some fucking place. I hate every second of that. I really don't like it. I think the auto aim is a big problem, but on Sorceress, because I'm a ranged character with Spark, I don't really have that problem. So this auto aim stuff isn't an issue for me at all now. So that made it already a lot more enjoyable. But in general, I think ranged just feels better, like in any other game. And obviously there's good melee builds or whatever, but I think range just felt 10 times better. I'm always a melee player, by the way, and I think range felt way better. Yeah, and if I didn't find this character, I would have probably quit the game. So that's also a big problem, I think. Early game is not very balanced at all, and the leveling in general doesn't feel very balanced of this, like, skill gem related. I think some skill gems are 10 times better than others, especially during the leveling, and I think that's a very weird choice. Like, if you give people these choices in the early game, like, why are some of them just completely unusable, basically? I don't understand that. We can talk about the campaign really quick as well. I think overall the campaign was, from a story perspective, pretty good, but from the length, it was way too much. And that was only, like, we only have half right now, right? So I think that's gonna be a problem long term, like redoing this campaign, finding all of the skill points again, finding all of these little resistance things and all of the small mini bosses every single time, every single league, every 3 months. I think that's gonna be a problem, to be honest. I think it was a problem in PoE 1 already, and I think it's gonna be a problem here too. That also brings me to the maps, I think, or the areas in general, but maps also suffer from this. The map sizes and the overall way to complete them is just super obnoxious. I think especially, well, my big tip is actually just getting really high movement speed boots, preferably even 30%. This will completely change the way you will traverse the game. I think, actually, that's a good point that we talk about boots right now. First piece of feedback that I genuinely want to see, every single boot in the game should have implicit movement speed. There shouldn't be a boot that has below 5% movement speed in the game, and it should not be a prefix. It should be implicit. I don't understand why that's not in the game. I think it just makes it annoying. There's so many boots in the game that you can't use because they have 0 movement speed on them. Just make the movement speed thing implicit. Just don't make it a prefix. I would already make traversing the game way better because it will be way easier to find movement speed, and it will be way more enjoyable that way. So that's my first thing that they should implement. Also, early game especially, I don't understand why you can't respec the skill tree for free. I think in at least the first act, but maybe even the first 3 acts, respecking should basically be for free. Also, you should have way more access to skill gems early game, so you can test things out and so on. I mean, late game, that's really not a problem, because in late game, you get showered with skill gems. You don't even know what the fuck to do with them. But in early game, for some reason, there's relatively low amounts of them, and sometimes it feels like you're bricked because you can't even respec and do something else. So I think early game needs a big overhaul when it comes in terms to freedom of respecking and trying different things out. Big problem, as I said, if I didn't play the second character, my monk is bricked. Like, I can't keep playing my monk because he's high level too. So like respecking still feels really bad. And I think most people, when they get to the point where they're like, oh, my character can't really progress anymore, they will just quit the game, you know? So I think respecking should be looked at. I don't mind actually the ascendancy locking you in. I don't think you should be able to respec your ascendancy or your class or something like that. But overall, respecking should be much more approachable, which they kind of tried to do in comparison to PoE 1, I guess, but it still feels very expensive, especially early game. And also, there's also the same thing with the gem UI. I'm not a big fan of the gem UI. I really dislike it, actually. The worst part is probably the support gems, because like just clicking on an ability and having recommended support gems is oftentimes recommends some dumb shit, and even then it's just such a limited amount. Just make it like the recommended are just weird, and this would probably just be a better window just to see, oh, what can I even use on this right now. Yeah, I generally, I'm not a big fan of the gem UI though. I think it's very confusing, convoluted, and also generally speaking, I know this might be controversial, I think the support gems are really boring. A lot of them have downsides, which makes them already kind of unattractive in a lot of cases. And even more of them seem like you can never use them, and then you're very limited. Like, I had a conversation today with someone who's saying, oh, because I'm playing Mana Flare on my Spark, I'm already an idiot because I should be playing Persistence, which is true. But it just doesn't feel like you have a lot of options right now. In most cases, anyways. Maybe that will change once there's more skill gems in the game, but right now it just feels very limited. Even more limited than something like Last Epoch skill tree or PoE 1 support gems. I think it's very limited, and most of them feel there's more of a negative to these things than a positive. So that's a general theme of the game though too. I think a lot of uniques, have been a complete disappointment. I'm a big unique fan. I'm also a big fan of the crafting system in Last Epoch with uniques, by the way, which they should have just stolen, which they didn't. I don't know why. But uniques have been very underwhelming. I don't think I've found a single useful unique in the entire game yet. I don't think I did. So that also feels really bad. I think uniques overall, most of them are pretty useless. There's obviously some of them, especially in late game, like this one that I'm wearing, that are really fucking good, but again, 95% of uniques are complete dog shit. Why? Like, I really like the idea of Last Epoch where they said uniques should be your endgame goal, and you can craft rare stuff, you know, from rare items onto the uniques. I don't know why that's not a thing. I don't know. Just a food for thought. Speaking of Last Epoch, we could also touch on the crafting system really quick, because I think this is also a massive problem in the game right now, and I've been in the endgame on 2 different characters, and crafting has never felt good. Now that you have more currency items, it obviously is a little bit more approachable at least, so you can at least use them, but generally speaking, it's just gambling. Like, I think crafting should be way more deterministic. Why did you remove the crafting bench? Why did you not take inspiration from last epoch crafting, which is honestly amazing? So in general, I think crafting should just be more deterministic. I don't understand this mindset of having everything just be a fucking casino and you're gambling all the time. Like, even more so than in PoE 1, which is fucking crazy. I think crafting is usually, or should be, in any RPG, should be the most deterministic way of getting something. You can still have RNG to it. It shouldn't be as gambly as this is. I think it's really not fun. And honestly, what I've just done is I just completely gave up on crafting anything, and I just stack up my items and do trading. Which takes me to the next point, that they're unwilling to revolutionize a lot of things of the game. Okay? Now, we have seen the currency exchange now, which honestly has been a massive improvement over PoE 1. I have used this plenty of times, and it actually is nice. It's fast, it's nice, there's no bullshit. Do the same for items. Okay, hot take. It's not a hot take. Just make an auction house, okay? It's not difficult. I know you're reluctant to do this. I know there's always hot takes. Oh, but the community, and you talk to people. No, you don't do shit, okay? You go to this fucking website. You type in your fucking parameters. You go through the items. Look what... Oh, I like crit chance or spells. Then you whisper the guy. Then it's like RNG if he responds or not. Like 50% of the time you get no answer, maybe more often than that. And then you go to his hideout, you do trade, and he says thank you, and you say thank you, and that's the end of the conversation. Like, there's no benefit of not having a fucking marketplace or an auction house of some sorts in the game, just like the currency exchange. I do not understand that. It's just, trading is terrible, okay? It feels so bad. And it would be way better if it was just a marketplace. I don't understand why it's not. Same thing with like a couple of other things. I think generally speaking, there's so much. How would I say it the best way? Like, so much tedium for no reason. Why, for example, is the salvage bench and the reforging bench not just a button in your inventory? Any other modern game does it like that. Why does PoE refuse to do that? Does this add something to my gameplay that I have to walk over to these all the time and click 13 times to reforge or salvage or whatever? I don't think so. I don't think this adds anything. I think it's just tedious for no reason. I mean, the best example of this is this piece of shit. Like, I don't know who thought that's a good idea, but this well is so pointless, it's crazy. Whenever you go to a town, you should just have it refilled. You should have your potions refilled. There's no... Why is this in the game? I don't... What does this add? Same for the points refunding that we already talked about, actually. Why can I not refund my points here? Like, just in any town. Like, I understand maybe you don't want people respecing in the middle of a map or in the middle of a boss fight just to min-max the boss fight or some shit. But just make me respec whenever I'm in town. I can just respec. Right click, respec, left click, not respec. Whenever I'm in a safe zone. Why do I have to go to an NPC and refund my passives? I don't know. I don't understand that. Same with the Scrolls of Wisdom. I think this item basically has almost no use anymore unless you want to identify like a strong box in a map or something. Because once you're out of the map, you just press Control left click on Doriani or the hooded one, which then identifies your items for free. Which I don't really understand what the point of that is. Like, at that point, why do you even have Scrolls of Wisdom? You couldn't the items just be unidentified and you have a button in your inventory that identifies all the items? It's just weird. Like, what's the point? What's the gameplay benefit of doing that, you know? Also, let's talk about something a little bit different. Actual combat. A big problem for me in the combat department is they're trying to make the gameplay like slow and methodical, but the reality is if you're slow and methodical, you will just die to things. And on top of that, you can barely see what's going on anyways. Okay, I'll just kill some mobs. How am I supposed to see what's below here? Explain to me how I'm supposed to see what's below this shit. The answer is I cannot see anything. And there's this fucking floor that ignites, the mobs that ignite, the corpses are ignited so I can't see anything. Like, my shit is exploding, there's a fucking whirlwind below me, I can't see anything. So I definitely think there should be some sort of skill transparency option in the game that allows me to see my own abilities less. So with it like transparent, so I can actually see what's happening. There's so many corpse explosions and stupid shit that rare mobs do that you can barely tell what's going on. And I can't even count how many times I died to some stupid rare mob because there's some fucking flower on the floor that I didn't see and it explodes and one-shots me or something. And overall, I mean, I also think cast on death effects in general are cringe, but, you know, here we are. And more design choice, I guess. I'm really not that big of a fan of the new endgame. Well, at least the ones that I've done. So, first of all, we could probably talk about the ascendancies. Because, ascending in this game is such a chore, and it's so annoying, and there's so much RNG to it, too. I've done 3 ascendancies on my main now, and I've done 2 ascendancies on my monk, and I don't think I liked either of those. I think it would be much more enjoyable if there wasn't, like, build-defining points behind them. Like, if these are just endgame systems where you have to do some stupid dungeon-like, rogue-like experience and go through it and get some giga rewards at the end, I think that would be way better. I think locking build-defining skill points behind RNG chores is just not a good idea, to be completely honest with you. I think it's not a good idea, and I think a lot of players will just quit the game because they can't get that one ascendancy point that they want, and they're like, okay, well, I'm just gonna quit then. I think it's just overall a bad idea to have that. Same with the maps. Well, not really the same with the maps, but kind of the same with the maps. I'm not really... I should have prefaced this, but I'm not actually a PoE 1 player. I've like barely 500 hours in that game, and that's over like 10 years, so I barely played that game. Because, you know, I'm not a big fan of ARPG combat, and it gets boring. Which this game kind of addresses, by the way, so that's a really good thing. I think the boss fights are great. I think the overall combat and the ability interactions, you know, like I can cast a Storm Orb, and then I cast in it, and then I do a Flame Wall, and then it empowers my Sparks, and then I do a Mana Tempest inside of it. You know, it feels nice that there's so many options, and there's so many interactions. I'm a big fan of that, and that's a massive improvement. But I think a lot of the cases, you're kind of being punished. I don't know what's going on with the loading screens as well, but I'm sure that's something they're gonna fix. I feel like I'm being punished by having too much setup. Like, if there is a one-button build that does the same damage as my build, it's just a straight-up upgrade, obviously. Because the amount of setup and casts I have to do my full damage is a lot. When there's a build that can literally just do 1 or 2 buttons and just walks through everything, that would be way better. So you're kind of disincentivized even to use multiple abilities if you could play a build that has less, if that makes sense. So I'm also not really sure why that is, or what the idea behind that is. I really don't understand. Anyways, back to the maps. I think PoE 1 maps are way better than this. I think this random generated stuff feels very meaningless. Every map I do feels like the same as before. Even though they have different areas, obviously, and stuff, but I'm really not a fan of that. In PoE 1, at least, it felt nice to complete the Atlas. You know, to go through all of the points felt way nicer. And here, it just feels kind of annoying. Also, completing maps is fucking awful. I would much rather have a map boss at the end than finding random rare mobs scattered around this massive map. I think it's fucking terrible. I'm gonna be honest. I think it's terribly boring. And it doesn't add anything. On top of that, rares are probably the most annoying mobs to fight in the game by far anyways. So I would much rather have a boss at the end of my maps than having some fucking stupid rare mobs that I have to chase down. I'm not a fan. I'm really not. I much prefer PoE 1 maps. I love the completionism of PoE 1 maps, where you basically, every map you do, you complete, and then you're done with it, basically, and you can move on to next things, and it gives you a little bit of a boost, you know? I just much prefer that. I don't know. I'm very disappointed with this mapping stuff. I think it's super... It feels super meaningless. Like any RNG generated stuff, it always feels like this, in my opinion. So I don't know if I don't know how you could fix this. I don't know if you can fix this. I would just Much prefer PoE 1 maps, or much prefer the PoE 1 Atlas. So all in all, I think the game has a lot to offer, and there's a very good foundation to work with. So I could absolutely see this game being the best thing ever made in like a couple of years. As it stands right now, I think it has a lot of issues, and it has a lot of identity issues too, because it's, as I said earlier, it's like in between. It tries to be like in between, oh, it needs to be slow and methodical, but you also get punished for being slow and methodical. And it would be much better if you just had a one-button build, you know? Because the mobs are still super fast, the rare mobs still one-shot you, but then if your build doesn't counter that, you know, if you don't one-shot the mobs back, if you are playing slow and methodical, and your build doesn't do as much damage as it should, you're just fucked. Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's kind of in between identities, and I wish they would have taken a little bit more out of PoE 1. And I don't want this game to be PoE 1. Just to make that very clear, I don't play PoE 1. I'm not that big of a fan of PoE 1 at all. So, but there's still some design elements in PoE 1 that are just better, you know. So I don't really understand why they would make the crafting worse, why they would make mapping way worse. The gem system, I think, is a straight up downgrade from PoE 1, besides that it's not on gear anymore. I think that's an upgrade, but everything else about it seems like a downgrade. The potions are actually much better now, I would say, but there's also less interesting. So it's a good thing that there's no more Flask piano, but there's also nothing interesting about Flask, or very little. So it's also... Charms, I'm also not really sure about these, to be honest. I'm not that much of a fan either. It's like you're not really in control of what's going on most of the time, and yeah, I'm not that big of a charm fan. Same with the that you need charm slots on your belt. Why just make it unlock through the campaign or something, you know? Act 2 gives you 1 charm slot, Act 4, and then Final Act gives you a charm slot, for example. You know, I don't understand why it has to be on the belt. I'm rambling, I know. I think the game could become something really, really, really good. Right now, though, I feel like they're still pretty far away from realizing all of the things that they wanted to do. I don't hate the game. I really don't. I think there's so many things that they're going super in the right direction with, but it still will need some work, I would say. That's basically my point. Also, if you're like thinking about buying the game and playing early access, I think there's really no downside to it, because you also get 300 in-game currency points, which you need anyways to buy stash tabs. If you didn't know, if you don't have a premium stash tab, you can't sell items on the trade website, meaning you have to buy stash tabs anyways. And also the currency stash tab, the gem stash tab, this one, I think they're kind of mandatory, so you're not really losing $30 by buying this early access. You're basically just buying a stash tabs anyways that you will need anyways on release. So there's no point in like saying, oh, I'm just gonna play free to play, because you will have to buy, you will have to pay $30 for stash tabs anyways, and you might as well just do it now, right? So I hope the game continues to progress. I hope they listen to the feedback. I know there's a lot of discussion around, oh, just get good, oh, but it's not PoE 1, there's so many, like, complete clowns talking about this game too, and I'm probably one of them, but I hope that they keep improving it, and I hope that they copy some systems from other games, and I hope that they even copy some systems from PoE 1. So, but generally, as I said, I think it can absolutely become the best game ever, if they continue to polish it up properly. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. Thank you for hanging out. I'll see you in the next one. Have a nice weekend. Peace.